What is up, Bitcoiners? It's your boy CK, and this is another episode of the Bitcoin Magazine podcast. This week, I'm super excited to introduce you to Javier at Crypto Bastardo from Twitter. He does a lot of work with Cointelegraph's Espanol version of their publication, as well as he is one of the leaders behind Satoshi in Venezuela, and all around fantastic member of the Bitcoin community. Javier brings the ever important perspective of a Bitcoiner living in Venezuela. As a Venezuelan, Javier has suffered for years. He had to go through so many tribulations and trials that have stemmed from the economic and just overall oppression that everyone in Venezuela who is still living in Venezuela is constantly going through. This is an extremely important podcast episode, and it really puts things into perspective on why neutral money like Bitcoin is so important, and why Javier and other folks in Venezuela are turning to Bitcoin. I think you guys are really going to like this one. Before we get into the show, though, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor. It is Stacks 2.0. They're no longer block stacks. It's now the Stacks 2.0 blockchain, and they're really orienting around Bitcoin, right? So the whole idea is it's a blockchain. They have a proof of transfer, POX, and you peg in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the money on the blockchain. They also have a governance and staking token to support that blockchain, STX. But you don't need that token to use the blockchain. And that blockchain, it takes on a lot of the features that, you can't build directly into the Bitcoin blockchain, things that other altcoin chains are trying to do. And it brings it to a Bitcoin denominated world. So I think that the world is going to start denominating in Bitcoin, and the closer and more trustless you can get to using Bitcoin, the more people are going to want to use those applications. So it's exciting to see what Blockstacks is doing here and them committing to Bitcoin. We're starting to really see the narrative of Bitcoin, not blockchain. Like their marketing, their branding is all about, we are part of Bitcoin. We're leveraging the most important and the most prevalent blockchain, and Bitcoin is money on our blockchain. So I like that turn of directions. Go check out Stacks2.com. So that's STACKS2, the number 2.com, and learn more especially if you're a developer. But if you want to just poke around and see their blockchain based decentralized apps and DeFi stuff, again, they're doing that all on the Stacks2 blockchain. And that is enough from me. Let's get right into this fantastic podcast with Javier. I'm really excited to bring you this interview with Javier from Satoshi in Venezuela, and he often writes for Cointelegraph and Espanol. Javier is a awesome and diehard Bitcoiner in Venezuela, fighting for free money. Javier, welcome to Bitcoin Magazine podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, CK. It is a really great pleasure to do this interview. I'm really excited to have this chat.
So Javier, outside of just your basic introduction, like who are you? What got you into Bitcoin? Why is Bitcoin important?
Okay, I'm Javier Bastardo. I'm from Venezuela. I'm currently living in Venezuela. I'm in Caracas. What drove me into Bitcoin first was my job. Since 2017, I was working at Crypto Noticias. That is a very known Spanish speaker newspaper, digital newspaper about cryptocurrencies. And before the bull run in that year, I started to earn my payments directly in BTC. And that was my first experience in the Bitcoin scene, and I was really interested in blockchain in the very first time, since that was the dominant narrative that blockchain will help to decentralize everything. And after seeing a couple of projects fail, I focused on Bitcoin, and I then moved from Crypto Noticias to Cointelegraph, and in 2019 I founded a Bitcoiner movement here in Venezuela that is named Satoshi in Venezuela. And I can connect the other answer about why is important Bitcoin with this, because I created this group, I created this project to help other people to understand the things that I understood after working on the crypto journalist scene, about how Bitcoin could be used here in Venezuela to avoid the hyperinflationary context of the local currency. So I thought that maybe I could share my experience with other people and share some knowledge about the basics of Bitcoin. So I think that Bitcoin is really important to every person that is looking for freedom. And we are in a sociopolitical context of really few freedoms. And so it is all connected now. Many people think like money is not connected to your freedoms, or it is only connected to the kind of freedoms that the status or maybe the things that you can buy give you. But it is beyond that, because if the money that you earn, like the Bolivar, is daily depreciating, it is also depreciating your time, the time that you spend to earn those Bolivars. So it is attempting against your individual freedom of become the human that you really are. So it is all connected, Bitcoin, the need of freedom, and the context of Venezuela. So I think that everybody that is living here or that is facing a kind of tyrannical government, or that is controlled by the state, will find Bitcoin useful. And so that's it.
With your personal experience, since you've been getting paid in BTC since you said 2017, right? How has that affected your life directly, right? You're living in Venezuela, one of the countries that is the biggest victims of, bad monetary policy and government corruption. You've adopted Bitcoin for years at this point. Like, how has that helped and affected your life? And then, maybe you can kind of compare it to other people that are around you that haven't done that.
First, I didn't become a millionaire. I'm still, I have to work as a normal person. I never holded a full coin. So it's not about getting rich fast, but not being so poor as the regime is trying to make us here. Because as I said, we are living in a country with really low freedoms and with no political institutions. The state is being destroyed from the inside, from the Chavismo. So the context is really awful, and also is the destruction of the currency. And the people that is living through that destruction and don't have another tool, let's say a dollar or maybe euros or pesos, it depends on or on where you are, that people is really having bad times. The people that is still linked to the fiat currency of the country, And in this case, I'm being lucky to have a way to earn a different kind of money, money that maybe in 2018 and with the bear market, I moved to a cheaper place in the city because I lost part of my savings in USD because the bear market make the Bitcoin price tank. But even in that case, I'm not struggling as hard as the very large majority of the country, and I think that because I'm not an really tech savvy person, my university degree is in philosophy, so I had to learn a lot about what is Bitcoin and how to use it. And I think that every people is set to make the same path to know about Bitcoin, to use it. And in this point, I think that as we are all facing the same reality, the same destruction of the economy, we are maybe not with the one directly. I mean, I'm not eating from the garbage, but I'm looking people that is doing that. So I can't avoid the reality at all, but Bitcoin makes me go through it in a different way, and it makes me to connect with people like you, people like that is in other projects, and people that maybe can offer me some job opportunities. And this is not because I'm a special. This is because of Bitcoin community, of the Bitcoin knowledge that one can accumulate in this path of learning to use it and go through the bear markets. And now I can understand better how it can change people's life. And yes, I think that I'm trying to share that with people here. And it's difficult because not everybody have the time or is earning enough to use to use Bitcoin. But I think that if we can show I don't think that the majority, but the people that is interested in learn about Bitcoin, how it can improve their life with a living example as mine, maybe it could be a easier way to spread the word and something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can understand why people haven't quite connected the dots yet, but I'm kind of curious, like, what's the Bitcoin community in Caracas like? And are there people who are like, known to be known to be knowledgeable in Bitcoin, like, and are there people who are like using this technology to help alleviate, the struggle that they're kind of forced to deal with because of the government?
I know other Bitcoiners here like Alessandro Cesare, El Sultan Bitcoin. I think that you already chatted with him. I know other Bitcoiners that are low profiles ones, like Bit Brothers Venezuela, like they're holding the original lightning torch, the first one, and they was operating a node with a battery because we were in a blackout. So yes, there are this kind of people. I personally know miners, Bitcoin miners, and I tend to say that even Bitcoin, we need to always take in mind that the context is disturbing, that the context is their knowledge
Hey,
about
Javier.
something. Yes.
Hey, I started to interrupt. I didn't get you for the last minute. You cut out. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, you're back. I lost you a couple
Okay.
times there.
Okay. I can start again if you want.
Yeah, so I heard all the way up until you were telling the story about the kind of low profile Bitcoiners that had the lightning torch, the original lightning torch.
Okay, okay. And okay, and I know other people that is are doing mining stuff and that are trying to spread some awareness on Bitcoin as a tool. We always try to say to all we care about Bitcoin, and that the community is trying to, I think, that share this approach that I mentioned it previously, that is to show how people could improve their own lives, because we can't promise people that they will get rich with Bitcoin or something like that, but it is useful because it is really liquid. It could help you to save some money, even in some case. And in a context like this, to save money is something that is almost prohibited. So that kinds of things are the stuff that I think that worth to share, and I feel that those guys that are standing to talk about this are looking things like this, and we had communities or of some altcoins, some shit coins around, but they're not as active as they were in 2017, and 2020 seems to be the Bitcoin year.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can imagine that after 2017, most of the interest in altcoins kind of left after the gains, right? And then once that happens, Bitcoin's kind of the only thing that's actually useful because it's actually liquid. Um, can you like can you talk about like what's the biggest pushback or struggle for people? Is it mostly just they don't have enough value at all to save in Bitcoin? Like, do do people understand that? I mean, I think Jameson Lopp had a great quote or tweet. He said that Bitcoin's not a get rich quick scheme; it's a don't get poor slowly scheme. Or, I mean, if people who are living in a country like Venezuela don't get poor quickly scheme, right? Can you like talk about like where's the kind of mental barriers, or is it like technological? Like, what are the barriers to people kind of getting how Bitcoin as a new type of money can help them?
I think that we have both kind of barriers. We have mental and also technological barriers because we are not really used to dollars. In the Before the Chavismo get the power, dollars were a thing not from the many of the Venezuelans. Not a majority of Venezuelans had dollars, and it is difficult to imagine people getting used to dollars and electronic dollars and digital dollars and all that stuff. Of course, that we are really linked to U.S. economy and the U.S. dollar because the oil, the stuff that we have a lot of oil, and yes, that we have we had a really big amount of dollar entering the economy, but in those moments of bonanza, we were using bolivars in the daily basis. So I think that the mental barrier could be related to the I think that the difficulty to get dollars in the early days of the modern Venezuela, and we are having a de facto dollarization, but it was started because of the blackout, that huge blackout that we had almost 4 days here in Caracas without electricity, but in other places of the country, they spend like weeks without electricity, so they can't stop to live. So the hyperinflationary position of save a hard money, a hard currency that in this case was the dollar. In this scenario of blackouts, of can't spend or can't exchange those dollars for bolivars, they simply spend directly the dollars, and that started a run of new adaptation to these dollar values in the streets. But it is a new phenomenon. It is difficult to see really fluid exchange of goods against dollars because there are no enough bills to make the operations happen in a good way. So the dollarization have its own problems that are also combined with this low familiarity with the dollar. So, and it in the case of Bitcoin, it combines with a really poor structure in the country, from internet connections, even from electricity. So in this case, the electronical barriers could be even the most basic infrastructure. And in Caracas, you can say that maybe we can use more Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, and we have where to spend those sats. But in other places of the country, you not only not have those places to spend, but you don't have the connectivity, or even maybe you can have the electricity to do so. So those two things combined, I mean the mental barriers of the dollarization and the adoption of a new currency, and the adoption of a currency that is digital as Bitcoin, and the idea that the infrastructure to adapt this technology is not that great could be the two key points to that may be stopping a more bigger adoption. And I think that a third point that could be or could lead us to understand this in a better way, because I'm in this reality too, but I already walk this path of knowledge about Bitcoin, and I know how to use Bitcoin in a way that I could send a transaction with low connectivity. I know how to pay low fees, etc., etc. But it is the education, the education phase of the Bitcoin stuff here, because people don't have enough time to earn bolivars or dollars or even Bitcoins to eat. And there are not a big majority of those people that can spend time learning about all the stuff of Bitcoin. So it will lead us to a little minority of people that will spend that time and will learn how to use Bitcoin even in this scenario, and that will thrive over that mental barrier of dollars and the not so familiarity with other currencies. And I think that those 3 points are just the key issues to Bitcoin adoption.
I know that I interviewed Simon from Value, and it's really, really interesting that the power outage is something that got the ball rolling for, de facto dollarization. Are you familiar with Value, and are fintech tools kind of like that being adopted? And I mean, I guess, outside of Bitcoin, what are people trying to do to address their issues?
Okay, yes, I know Value, and I also interviewed Simon from my own podcast. And yes, we have a lot of this kind of fintech solutions, because the digital dollar, the crypto dollar, the synthetic dollar, cash dollar, I don't know, all this name of the dollar are needed here, because not everybody have the chance to have a US account or an American bank account, and they can be left behind of the economy of the country. So there are many options as Value, and there are fintechs that are trying to combine the maybe traditional fintech solution, like digital banking, but not with all the requirements of a traditional bank. And there are others as Value that are trying to combine the things that Bitcoin give you, or even that the things that crypto allows to do, to solve this need of dollars, because the de facto dollarization is not waiting for anybody, it's just happening. And the necessity of a way to spend in a good way, or the necessity of save your money in a currency that you are being familiar to, like the dollar, because I said that we are not historical familiar with that, but in this process, the currency that is dominating the streets, or that is dominating the economy, is the dollar. So if you need those tools to use it, it could be kind of naive to think that Bitcoin could be the answer to all the Venezuelans, as it is to me, because I'm exposed to all these crypto or fintech or wherever they are, dollars, and I don't use it because Bitcoin solved the problem to me. But I understand that it is naive to think that everybody will jump in Bitcoin as I did. And yes, I think that Value is a really good project that is trying to solve something that is really needed, this dollar way to save, but a way to move money around countries, because we have a really big diaspora of migrants, of people that flee away of the country because of the Chavismo, and they are trying to send money to the country, to their families, and the thing that Value is trying to do is to connect those people that flee the country with the people that are still being here as me. So this is a thing that is needed, and I think that if the context of the pandemic, of this nightmare of lockdowns and national lockdowns and everything goes away, we will see a new wave of Venezuelans leaving the country. So this necessity of a way to send money abroad, even with Bitcoin around, this necessity will be bigger. And I don't think that everybody will get the Bitcoin bus. I really want them to jump in, but I understand that fintech solutions will be there, and I hope then to help people to make the money through the country.
So I want to jump into something that you mentioned. You called Venezuela modern Venezuela, and you also mentioned that you know how to send Bitcoin when there's no internet. And obviously, Venezuelans have been exposed to prolonged blackouts. Can you kind of talk about what life is like in modern Venezuela today, and maybe jump into like mesh networks and some of the other stuff that Venezuelans are tech savvy Venezuelans like yourself are using to, still interact despite being kind of in this situation?
Yes, because the destruction of the currency is always an opportunity to some people to get a different and innovative solution to the problems that we are facing. So we have people that is literally eating from the garbage, but you have other people that are building structures to share internet connections via fiber cables and stuff like that. So you have this inequity. I think that is the word. So you can see really big Bitcoin mining operations in the private sector. You can see people that have VR sets to play or stuff like that. I mean, we have some technology inside the country, but it is not accessible to all the people. And even with the fact that you don't really need a lot of technology to use Bitcoin, it could be hard to afford a smartphone to some people. It could be hard to afford even a old laptop. So we have a lot of inequity in the country, driven from this political disaster. And yes, I think that Caracas is the place of the most modern of the things that we have here in Venezuela. Valencia, that is another city, and I don't think that there are others that we can talk about modern country, because there are constant blackouts. They have a really poor internet connection, and we are we are seeing that most parts of the country are a kind of Amish people. Like we stop it in some way in the time in those places. Like they don't have oil to move around, the gas to move around. They have to walk to move from the places. They have to use cash. If you are in the border of the country, you will be better using cash pesos or USD cash against every other digital payment, even bolivars that is the de facto medium of exchange here. And these are all the faces of the same country. I mean, I'm in Caracas talking with you with a poor but enough connection to make this happen. And I know people around me that have better services, and I also know people that don't have services at all. So yes, I think that the modern Venezuela is a really tiny concept here.
Wow. I mean, it's honestly unbelievable, how much harm a bad government and monetary manipulation can do to a group of people, right? Venezuela was the finest country in South America at one point, kind of like the pinnacle civilization. So it's just crazy to kind of hear you describe, what the Chavistas have reduced it down to.
Yes, and you can see the buildings. You can still see the things that were that gave the bright to the city or to the country in general. But you see them in ruins. You see in surrounded by garbage and for homeless people. So it is really disturbing to understand how deep bad government could change a country. Yeah, totally agree.
So I guess Javier, where's their hope, right, for the Venezuelan people? Obviously, there's fintech companies, there's Bitcoin, there's young entrepreneurial, tech savvy people in the country, and as well as a diaspora that are sending money back. Where's their hope in the country? And I guess where do you think Venezuela is going in the next few years?
To be completely honest, I'm hopeless on Venezuela. I have a different life and I have hope in my own capacities because of Bitcoin and because of my own professional involvement in the industry. But this is in a really individual sphere and a really individual I don't know, yeah, sphere. It is only about me and about the people that I know that are related to Bitcoin, that are already linked to something that is working. But about Venezuela, they the Chavismo have all the control of the country. And this is really awful to say, but we are, I think that we are in the ways to become a new Cuba, like 40 years with the motherfucker Castros. We will be spending 40 years with the Chavismo. We already have 20 years of this garbage, and they have full control of the country. They have the guns. They have They had criminalized the protest. We have a hate law, and if you are caught on the street protesting for anything, the most tiny protest could lead you to the jail. And I think that anybody in the country want to spend any time in a jail in a country like this, where the people that is in jail are colluding with police guys to extortion you or to kidnap your family or stuff like that. So anybody will be protesting against the regime. And if you don't have a movement of citizens that could face or could raise their voices against this, it is really difficult to see a movement or anything. I'm really pessimistic on Venezuela. I'm here because I can't leave the country. I don't have enough money. And because I think that I could help people to create their own bubble, their own bubble as I did with Bitcoin. Yeah. I think that even when they maybe can't become me as I'm doing, or the thing that I do, they could find a way to use Bitcoin to survive this really pessimistic context as I'm doing, because I have hope in the project. I think that I could make Satoshi Venezuela grow bigger, and I think that I could share more interviews and tutorials and knowledge about Bitcoin. But this is in a really tiny and personal sphere of realization. I don't think that we are in a position to make a change, a deep change in the things, especially in a political way. But maybe, and this is a really the most tiny hope, but that it gave me a lot of pleasure to thinking, if we can share Bitcoin with enough people, maybe we can create a little movement of free riders. Because all the thing that we are talking about when we talk about Bitcoin is about freedom, and we don't have freedom. So if we have more diehard Bitcoiners, even 10, even 15, 20, 100 diehard Bitcoiners, I don't think that we will change the country, the whole country or stuff like that. But, well, we can start to build something. Maybe in these 40 years of Chavismo drove to a Bitcoiner party that take the power or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, in general, it's beautiful that at least for you personally, Bitcoin has offered hope, and I think that many people have expressed this. And my co-host on FedWatch, which is another Bitcoin magazine podcast, he says that Bitcoin is where growth will happen in the future. You know, the future of the dollar system and the fiat system is government getting in the way and government blocking access and needing, demanding permission. And Bitcoin is going to be where the market actually exists and where opportunity exists. So it's beautiful to hear you talk about how it gives you hope. And also it's awesome to see it in practice. Like, you are far more connected to the international world and the world around, outside of Venezuela than I'm assuming the majority of people around you.
Yes. And this is all because of Bitcoin. And I think that it make you think about how the individual is the base of all the things that we do, the base of all the society. And as we are facing a regime that is trying to erase the individuality, that is trying to make you think that you can only think in food and to carry water because you don't have water in your house, and that is trying to put you in the really down Maslow pyramid scheme. So even with that context against you, using Bitcoin and know about it, and I think that understand the ethos of Bitcoin, that these ideas that Andreas used to share, that rules without rulers is the perfect knowledge model, the perfect thought model that we need to spread to survive this destruction. Because the context, as I said, I don't think that the political context will change anytime soon, but we can save individuals. I don't. Oh, I mean, no. We as people. I mean, the ideas that are around Bitcoin could help people to save themselves, even living here. I'm saying this, and I find it kind of weird to say, but it is, as I mentioned it, a tiny bubble that you can create. I mean, I'm in a corner of my house where I do live streams and I talk with guys like Andreas Antonopoulos or Peter McCormack, Stefan Libera. Now I'm talking with you. And that's really weird in a context like this. But this is something that is driven because of Bitcoin. That is something that find me connected to people that is aligned with the things that I want, the things that I think that could be useful to the country. So yes, I hope that I can share this with more people.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, I'm just inspired hearing you speak, and you constantly are reminding me of how privileged I am. And I just sit on a pedestal really and just talk about how great Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin is this tool for helping people. But, seeing you, having to actually use it and lean against it in that way, and seeing that it delivers, it's awesome, and it makes me want to push for Bitcoin adoption even further.
Yes, this is the path, my friend.
So, Javier, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Satoshi and Venezuela, and then we can wrap this one up.
Okay, Satoshi Venezuela is an educational project that I founded in 2019. I started asking the people of Bitcoinese to send me like $200 in Bitcoin to make the first meetup happen. But after I wrote the rant that I sent them by DM, because it was a rant like, I will not scam you, I'm just trying to make this happen. And I saw that I have a really interesting idea, because here wasn't a Bitcoin only organization. We were full of shit coining and stuff like that. So even with the fact that we have a really great previous organization that is Bitcoin Venezuela, that they're still working and they have a really amazing humanitarian work here that combines Bitcoin and the human causes. A project like Satoshi Venezuela, like that is focused in the talk about Bitcoin, the diffusion of Bitcoin, the spread the message of Bitcoin, was missing. So Break Even Bitcoin, that is a Bitcoiner that works with Swan Bitcoin, connected me with Samson Mo from Blockstream. And from there, it was simply an avalanche. And we were focused in doing in real life meetups. But as the pandemic hits, I had to reinvent the project. So I launched the Satoshi in Venezuela YouTube channel, that if you are listening this, will be amazing if you can subscribe to it. And the YouTube channel give us the opportunity to connect with the people that already were aware of the project, but outside of the Venezuelan community. And we had a lot of stuff. We had a lot of interviews with Bitcoiners around the world, and to know about things like Lightning or maybe privacy on Bitcoin and stuff like that. And as all is in digital, we can connect with people of all the country, but all the world too. So yes, that's what we are doing this year, focusing in the YouTube channel, launching this Hablemos de Bitcoin podcast, and yes. This is the main thing that we are doing with the project right now. And as far as the pandemic passed, we are committed to do more in real life meetups, more probably focused here in Caracas, because I was traveling around the country. But to be really honest and fair, as I said, the modern Venezuela is here in Caracas, and it's difficult to talk with people about something that they find that will make them rich, like Bitcoin, but in context of poverty, and to tell them, no, man, this is not for make you rich. They are not looking yet to uncensorable money or stuff like that. So yes, doing YouTube stuff, doing social media stuff, and hope soon we will be doing in real life meetups.
Javier, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of you around here at Bitcoin Magazine. So I'm excited to continue to pick your brain and get your piece of the Bitcoin story documented. So thanks for coming on here. What's your last word for the audience, and where can people learn more about you?
Thanks a lot for having me here, CK. It is a really great pleasure, and I'm a really great big fan of Bitcoin Magazine, especially from Aaron Van Virgun. Well, I think that every time you talk about Bitcoin in Venezuela and use Venezuela as the argument and the use case from excellent to make a point from Bitcoin, please remember that we are facing a humanitarian devastation, that the regime is a systematic human rights violator, that we are facing really bad times here, and try to not just use this disaster to make some narrative sound cool, because it hurts a fellow Bitcoiner here in Venezuela. And you can find me in social media as Crypto Bastardo. It have an I instead of Y, because crypto is with an I in Spanish. And well, thanks a lot for having me here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you again to all the listeners out there. Yeah, make sure, have some empathy for the people who are going through extremely hard times in Venezuela. And, let's find out the way that you can help people in Venezuela and people around the world who are having tough times. Find a way to help them with Bitcoin. Everyone could use a little bit of help, and for some people, a little bit can go a long way. For all the listeners, make sure to follow Bitcoin Magazine at Bitcoin Magazine on Twitter and at bitcoinmagazine.com. You can follow me at CK_snarks. Please give us a share, a listen, and all that good stuff. And please follow Javier and follow Satoshi in Venezuela on YouTube. That's it from me, guys. Stay tuned for another new show next week. Peace. A quick reminder that all of the content in this episode is for informational and entertainment purposes only. You should not construe the information as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. Nothing contained in this presentation constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, or offer by BTC Media, the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast network, or any third-party service provider to buy or sell securities or any other financial instruments. Do your own research.